Yeah, but the concern really is for what's happening on the ground in Syria, and they're saying that there's still a lot of fighting going on, especially in the north of Syria, where many of the troops are pulling out from. Although President Trump says the war has been fought, the war has been won, these allies are saying that is not true, especially France. Are saying that this is not true, that they will continue. But I mean, how much further can they go without the U.S.? They have the highest number of troops in Syria.
And I completely understand. Like I said, the northern part of Syria is where the Kurds are, and some of the concern as well is that there's no timeline, there's no timetable, there is not kind of vague in decision-making process. What's going to happen to the Kurds? Could
that also be a strategy, perhaps?
Might be. Exactly. That might be a strategy given, I mean, at least to put them on notice and let them know as things unfold, you can actually have a detailed timetable. But at the same time, I think the concern is, well, we've fought with the Kurds, we've armed the Kurds. I mean, they helped us out in Iraq and also fighting in Syria as well. So what's going to happen to their fate? What's going to happen? Because, of course, we know the kind of tension between the Turkish government and that of the Kurdish movement. There were about, 5.3 million Kurds in Turkey. And then, so there's a lot of stakeholders play in there as well. So what's going to happen? And I don't know how long France, as part of the NATO, Turkey is there as well as part of NATO. I don't know, because the U.S. comes with a lot of asset to help in this fight, logistics, supply chain as a whole, and intel as well. So when we leave, those things actually goes with us as well. So, but I think just for a while, the gap will be created, and then France will have to figure out a way to fill that gap.
The way the Syria war has been going, it's difficult at this point to say what really was the reason why the war started in the first place. Yes. I know it began with the protest, people asking President Bashar al-Assad to step down. No, that was the second protest, because the first time it was constitutional reform that people were asking for, and then that changed, and then they started asking for Assad to step down, and then the whole thing blew over. Right now, nobody really knows who's causing the war in Syria, who's fighting what. You have so many rebels being armed by so many stakeholders, as you say. So what really should be a solution to this? To be honest with you,
the solution might not be palatable to any of the stakeholders. In this kind of situation, when you defeat the ideologies, the extremism to a certain point, I think at some point you have to come to the table. As you see across the Levant and all the areas part of the Middle East and the Southwestern Asia, that we have some of these problems. At some point, we have to come to the table, because you can't kill ideologists. I mean, you can't wipe ideologists out. At some point, you have to come to the table, like we did in Iraq, just have some kind of negotiation. But the opposition is so fragmented. I mean, everyone has a different voice. And then we have Iran play over there, we have Russian play, we have Turkish play, and all other forces. And then, of course, we have to talk about ending the war versus building a nation, because the war has to be ended and building the nation as a whole. And then, how do we prevent ISIS from raising the ugly head again? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And who are the players that's going to be involved in the building nation? You talk about fighting an ideology, and then you talk about sitting at the table. I suppose you're talking about negotiation. How do you do that? President Barack Obama, he gave the orders for Osama bin Laden to be killed, and eventually Osama bin Laden was killed. And I remember some analysts then saying, you've only killed one man, but you haven't killed the ideology. And it's spread. You now have Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, you now have Al-Qaeda in North Africa. You also have ISIS groups in northern Nigeria and in certain parts of Africa. So how do you negotiate with people who have these ideology? Exactly. There's a reason why everyone has some kind of ideology. It's because they want certain things, and I think that's the end result of it all. They want certain things, and you have the ability to come to table with them and understand from their standpoint, and they understand from your standpoint as well. I know it's not the most probable course of action, but it's probably what needs to be done, because at some point, how can you actually quantify, or there's a performance metrics to measure, the defeat of an ideology? It's completely impossible. So what we've seen that has happened is because you have to give them certain, concession, and I don't think anyone wants to do that. Of course, we've heard that slogan, we don't negotiate with terrorists, and all those kind of stuff in the different corridors of power. But to be honest with you, in my own humbling opinion, and this non-attributional to a certain degree, that I believe this one needs to happen, because at some point when you fight, and you can't kill them. I mean, we've been fighting this thing. Well, this is the 8th year in Syria, and then Nigeria has been going on for a while, because I remember I got involved in training Nigerian army in 2008, 2009, and let's say from there on now, it's about 10 years of this Boko Haram thing, and we still haven't resolved it yet. It's extremely difficult, and this has been going on in the course of time as well. Look at it, the Turkish government has been fighting the Kurdish movement since 1978. That's about 40 years of armed conflict going in and out. So this thing cannot be totally eliminated unless you come to some terms with them. And those terms has to be something that everyone is willing to bear.
Then how do we now deal with insurgency in northern Nigeria and in other parts of Africa we share borders with? Niger, Chad, those countries that we have security relations with because of the common problem, which is the insurgency in that part of Africa. How do we now deal with this? Because pulling U.S. troops out of Syria will definitely have an impact on these groups because they claim allegiance to ISIS. Yes,
and I think that due to sounding sounding warning for countries that are involved in Boko Haram fight, Cameroon, Niger, Chad, and Nigeria as well, that the fight is not over yet. And actually, it's because with this new withdrawal, I think it gives new life, new breath, a breath of fresh air to ISIS and their cohort, and of course Boko Haram included as well. So we have to continue until it's got to be a collaborative effort between the countries, sharing of information and intel. And most importantly, both countries have to step up their security measures on their borders, because a lot of this crossing in and out of it, as you can see, there's a reason why the Kurdish are helping. The Kurdish, they occupy a large span of geographical locations in the Middle East. As you can see, the same thing in some of the people that are involved in Boko Haram. They cross borders because they share the same ethnic groups across different borders in different countries. So all the security measures have to be stepped up for us to even to get to a place whereby we can actually negotiate and talk some kind of senses to them. But until then, let's be a sounding warning that they are regrouping, and we need to with the new threat. I mean, we have to understand that with this new withdrawal comes new threat. And Nigerian government and all of that government involved in that area needs to also assess those threats as well and see out the way to combat it.
When we come back after the break, the Yellow Vest protests continue in France, plus our interview with the French Consul General to Lagos. Stay with us.